Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter and that is Tara. We are going to talk about Quantum Leap Season 1, Episode 1. Not the original show. That'll come later, right? We got plans when this goes off season. When the new show's not on, we're going to start the original Quantum Leap. But today we're talking about the first episode of the new rebooted 2022 version of Quantum Leap, which just premiered. So that is what we're going to talk about. It's Season 1, Episode 1. It is called July 13th, 1985. And if you don't know the premise of Quantum Leap, it's about someone who... Well, this goes for both the original and this version. It's someone who, using a device, an invention, a machine, something high-tech, starts jumping from person to person through time. And sort of takes over the other person's body and has to... Each episode is them having to solve something in their life before they then leap again. But much like the original show, and Tara's actually seen the original, so she'll correct me if I'm wrong here. Our main character, Ben in this case, who they're trying to get to come home, they're trying to bring him home back to 2022, he just keeps jumping. So, will he ever come home? We'll find out, maybe. For the record, I do think they're going to shake it up and probably do some different things to the original, where maybe he does come home occasionally and then goes back out. But that's just me making a guess, just to make it different.
You've never seen the original?
Nope.
So how do you know he never came home during the original?
Well, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything from the original, and I don't know.
Well, this episode does.
This episode does, to be fair. But even before I watched this episode, the final... I don't know anything that happens in the original Quantum Leap, but the final screen of text that appears at the very last episode is just something that's kind of in pop culture, and if you're on the nerd side of the internet, you've probably seen it at some point. I won't say what it is, I won't say what it says, but I just, it's the one thing I knew about Quantum Leap. I knew the basic gist of the premise, and that's the last thing you see in the show. Is that text.
I watched all of the original Quantum Leap for the first time this year. Before I even knew there was going to be a sequel coming out to it, which, you keep saying reboot, and I understand why, but I would call this Season 6, Episode 1, because technically it's a continuation.
I think sequel would be a better fit than...
It's got the same title.
It's got the same title. But that still counts as a reboot. Reboot isn't necessarily starting from scratch. It's a soft reboot. It's set in the continuity.
Yeah, but that makes you... reboot is a different kind of understanding with that means Sam and Al never happened. We're just going to do it all over again.
Not necessarily. There's lots of reboots that are kind of loosely continuing from the previous continuity.
Like what?
Oh god, you put me on the spot, but they definitely exist. This is the
that's all right. You don't have to think about it.
People in the comments put their examples of movie reboots and things that are still connected to the old franchise.
Movie reboots. We're talking TV shows here. The season
or
6.
TV shows. This is a terrible example because it wasn't very good, but the new Knight Rider from like 10 years ago was technically a sequel to the original Knight Rider and did have some cameos from the Hoff.
Sure,
so
but not a reboot then.
No, it was a reboot.
A reboot and a sequel?
A requel, yes.
Anyway, this is taking too long. But I love Quantum Leap. I watched it all for the first time this year. And then I watched it again, and I was super psyched for this new show to start.
Yeah, so
had my calendars marked and everything.
Yeah, so we have different perspectives going into this. Now, we are going to talk about the original. We're going to start reviewing that when this goes on its break, because this is only going to be running till whenever, and then when that goes on its break, we're going to review the original when it's off season. That's the plan. So I'll get to witness the original in the near future, but at least for now we have the two perspectives of someone who's never seen an episode of Quantum Leap and someone who's seen all of it. Admittedly, not someone who grew up with Quantum Leap, not someone who watched it back when it aired, someone who just watched it earlier this year, but
yeah.
Still, different perspectives. And I think what's interesting is that this episode, and we're not going to go into spoilers yet, because it's the first episode, we will start spoiler free, and we'll do a little bit of just general impressions and stuff. But this episode does kind of neatly cement that it is set in the same universe as the previous show. And I think it is neat that I don't think it alienates anyone for not having seen the original. It just kind of feels like backstory as opposed to, oh, you're out of the loop because you didn't, you're out of the quantum loop. See? See what I did?
No.
You're out of the quantum loop because you didn't watch the original show. It's actually kind of intriguing when they bring up a couple of the characters, and it doesn't seem like something they're going to do every episode necessarily, but they did make a point of like hitting the two main characters from the original show in this, and one way or the other. So and it basically cemented, and as soon as they announced this, because I remember if you go back and check out the almost cancelled TV news whenever this first got announced, and me and Connor were talking about it, as soon as there was kind of a hint that it was like, going to be set as a continuation after the original show, I said, oh, Bakula's guest starring. It's like they're doing it. They're going to have, he's going to find them. When, probably, if not the finale of season 1, it'll be a big season 2 thing they can promote, is that Sam Beckett's going to be there. Like, I'm calling it.
Well, yeah. Did you see the statement that he put out on Instagram?
I did not, but if he's denying it, he's lying.
Not just denying it, but like a whole story as to why he will not be part of this new series. And everyone's been very open, like everyone in the cast and stuff has been very open. Like, he had an invite, he even had a role in the show, but like he said no. He said no to it. And I mean, some people are speculating it's because, Dean Stockwell passed away last year, that he didn't want to do it without him. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm skeptical now because he really put out a definitive statement saying, I will not be a part of the show.
Okay, I didn't know that. I still
It's
think
only a couple days ago that he posted it.
I don't think it's impossible that he'll change his mind or
Neither
whatever.
do I. And like, with the age that we live in and how everything's, so easily spoiled, maybe this is part of an elaborate plan. But I don't know. Like, it seemed pretty definitive, and I'm not expecting him unless the show maybe goes multiple seasons. I don't know if I'm going to expect a cameo. Okay.
But they definitely bring him up, and I suspect that even if you don't see him, they might try and answer. You'll give closure to people who watched the original show because they never got closure in the first place. I think they'll do something to give people closure. That's my guess. That if they can't get him specifically to do it with him in the show, they're going to do something with it. I
honestly, I won't say what it is, but I like the original ending, and I feel like I already have an answer to why. That's
interesting, because most people who bring up Quantum Leap bring up the pain of that final title card.
I don't think they were super fans like me.
All those phony posers who watched it at the time, unlike me, who came along decades later.
I'll tell you about it after. I'll tell you my theory.
Okay. Do I want to know? Is it going to spoil things for me?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you already know what happens.
That's true. Okay. Oh, yes, but I mean, you probably got to give me more information. Anyway, so with all that out of the way,
fine, I won't do it then.
With all that out of the way, the new characters here. We got now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression from the original Quantum Leap was that there wasn't like a home base of characters that we're cutting to who are like trying to like bring him back. It was just him on his adventures, leaping from body to body, and you had obviously the second character who's the hologram from the future. But this episode starts immediately with here's a cast, here's a group of characters who are ensemble who we're definitely going to see every episode, who are set in 2022. So our hologram in this case, who's Addison, we're going to see her like come back to present day and like confer with her, so confer with Ernie Hudson. There's a Ghostbuster in the room, and he's in charge of everything because he's the old man now. So I mean that's a different setup to the original, right? In terms of just showing that kind of side of things. It
is. I'd say about 95% of the show is done strictly through the perspective of Sam Beckett, and there is glimpses and some characters that we meet, teases, It's mostly the world is mostly built through Dean Stockwell or through Admiral Al Calavici, the hologram. Like he's the one who's like communicating with those people, but we don't see him. We only like see Al talking to them. Or he uses his portable hand link, which is what he uses to connect to the computer system. Yeah, which is the same in this one, Ziggy.
Yeah, but here, I mean, this definitively sets up at the start. No, we have this group of characters that are part of the cast, and we're going to be seeing them every episode. I mean,
technically, you do see some people in the pilot episode, even before we meet Sam. But for the most part, we learn everything through Sam because he, wakes up in another person's body and has amnesia, just like in this episode.
That's actually one of the questions I was going to ask, because I was not expecting the amnesia part. But he doesn't remember, Ben in this case doesn't remember who he is. In fact, one of the things this episode does, and we're not in spoilers yet, but just to sort of set up kind of more of a season mystery, is like he kind of does this behind everyone's back because he's working with them all on this quantum leap device. They've resuscitated the program after decades of it being dormant, but he kind of goes there late at night when no one's around and uses it and surprises everyone by doing so. And then when Addison talks to him after she's the hologram and she's in the past talking to him, he's got amnesia, and that was expected because it's one of the side effects. But he can't tell them why he did it. Like, so there's kind of this mystery set up here at the start of the show of like, okay, what was he up to? Why does he believe he had to do that? And this is one of the things where there's obviously some things I'm not going to answer until the show's probably going to finish. But I feel like why he did this is probably something they might get to by the end of the season. It feels like here's your juicy thing we can kind of sink our teeth into this season.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I really like the mystery. Again, because we get everything through the original show through Sam Beckett's eyes. Like the whole mystery is just like who he was before he left. And like we just don't know. And the character of Al doesn't tell him because he doesn't want anything to be influenced. He goes back in time. He could make a phone call to somebody or something if he knew who he was going to call. So that's not Ernie Hudson joke, but
I didn't even think it was. I wasn't.
But so in any case, like that, there is always a mystery going on throughout the original Quantum Leap series that kind of keeps you, even though it's very episodic, kind of keeps you following the characters. But yeah, in this one, I like this mystery. I find it very intriguing.
It definitely gave me the vibe, and this goes along with the supporting cast who we're going to see every episode, but this definitely felt like, while it's still going to be episodic and that each episode is going to have leapt into a different time period, different character, this feels like it might probably have more of an overarching storyline, this version.
Right.
More of a serialized plot that they're kind of digging into as the season goes on. And I don't know if they ever did 2 parts in the original, maybe they did, but I suspect that occasionally maybe there will be like one leap will last 2 or 3 episodes rather than just being done by the end of the 42 minutes or whatever it is. That wouldn't surprise me, certainly. But you can kind of see why the concept is good for a TV show, though, because it does kind of lend itself to that episodic like form of storytelling.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I originally just put the show on as background and it just like hooked me right away. It was so much fun to watch because it is just every episode is someplace new with a new mystery and like what does he got to do. I think it's a great premise. Like it's a wonder why they never revisited it before.
I don't know. I guess we're just in the era of bringing things back, and someone recognized that there is kind of a cult following for this original show, and hopefully that turns into a mainstream following with this. So one of the things I have to ask then is, because I assume this was different in the original, is Addison and Ben. So Ben's the guy who's leaping. Addison is the woman who's from the same time period, but she's going back as a hologram to talk to him. One of the kinks, obviously, they've put in here is that they're actually a couple, but obviously he doesn't remember they're a couple. So there's a lot of like her biting her lip when she wants to tell him how much he means to her and things like that, or stuff like that we're obviously going to play with. And it's the sort of thing where I do think that eventually he is going to find that out. It feels like the sort of thing that they're not going to keep from him forever.
Yeah. I don't understand why Addison didn't even pick it up by the end of this episode. Like she was not putting a very good poker face on.
Yeah, I think at one point she says something really awkward like, you mean something to people in the future, including me.
I'm one
really,
of those people.
tears practically running down her face.
Wait, are we like a couple? Or
I'm getting the sense that I'm quite important to you. You know that?
I feel like you're mad at me.
Yeah.
In like a girlfriend mad at me kind of way.
Yeah, it's so I don't know. It's interesting to throw that wrench in there. It's on the one hand I could say it's very TV to do that, but
yeah. I really like this idea because I mean I'm gonna bring up the original a lot, but like one of the things that happens every week is Sam has to like fall in love with somebody, and that is often the storyline, if not almost every time.
I suspect that it won't happen nearly as often in this version, but when it does, it'll have this extra layer to it because she has to watch him, have feelings for someone.
Yeah, and she has to go by whatever the computer Ziggy is telling her that he has to do. And like if Ziggy says you have to like fall in love with this person or make sure this person falls in love with you, then like what's Ben supposed to do? Yeah.
That's actually one of the other little mechanics that I like. I knew kind of again vaguely what the premise of Quantum Leap was, but them actually saying in this episode that what triggers the next sleep is when you've sort of helped the person that you jumped into, and he goes, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "That's a good question, Ben.
That's a very good question.
Why does that trigger the next sleep?" That's very oddly specific for this. I mean, I don't know if the device has made this choice or if it's just once you're in the quantum flux, like this is what's, I don't know.
That's a very good question. Yes.
One
that I will not be answering for you today.
I'm glad. I don't want you to. That seems like too good a question to be spoiling.
But also, I just want to bring up one more thing with the whole like Ben and Addison actually being a couple. Is that I think it's kind of smart because one of the ethical concerns when watching the original Quantum Leap is so you're like with this woman who thinks you're somebody else. And this seems a bit problematic if things go a certain direction, And if Addison's there to be like, you have to find another way to not solve this riddle by like sleeping with somebody, then I think that kind of will remove that ethical quandary,
Yeah. I never really thought about that. It's probably something I would have thought of if I'd watched the original show.
It's more of a modern day lens thing, but it's definitely there. I mean, obviously I still love the show, but
I mean,
some of its time.
I mean, the devil's advocate in me's thinking, well, I mean, if the person he's taken over was supposed to have sex with someone and he has to have sex with the person for the universe to be right, then ultimately no one's really getting hurt, even because it's not like the other person's ever going to find out.
There's some things that happen later on that make you question. Is it the mind that's sleeping or is it the body that's sleeping? Because in the original show he actually replaces people, so whoever he jumps into, that original person swaps places with Sam Beckett. But in this one that doesn't seem to be the case. This one, he just seems to, take over them like some sort of a ghost would.
I mean, unless they're just not showing us it yet, it doesn't seem like his body's just his body's still disappeared somewhere. It feels like, anyway. I mean, they've not showed us like his like comatose body like lying on a table, like waiting for him to come back. We got to keep him up to an IV and feed him and stuff. While his mind's away. Maybe they'll show us that in a couple of episodes. I don't know. It didn't sound like his body was hanging around though somewhere.
Yeah. Well, don't expect answers for that in the original show because they flip-flop all the time on which one's sleeping. So
I think that's one of the interesting things about this, though, is that this is going to get a chance to answer a lot of things that maybe the original show never get around to.
Yes. I think also they've changed things to be done a different way so that we don't have as many questions. This is a new Ziggy. It's not even in the same location. Like this takes place in Los Angeles. The old one took place in New Mexico.
Sure. I think that's maybe the fascinating thing about this is that some of the things this is going to answer, it's not just because they want to have less mystery and like that. It's just more there's certain things that maybe worked in the original show as being a mystery that just wouldn't anymore. So, or maybe some of the things that were a mystery that were good, or they get to play with that now. And at some point in the season, or multiple seasons if it's successful enough to get multiple seasons, they can play with some of the old elements and say, okay, here's our take on kind of how that worked and how it's changed, or so on. So there is a lot of interesting potential in this being a sequel show, and I kind of, even just from this first episode, it had a bit more weight to it as a pilot, because it had this history to call upon, where it was like, hey, decades ago, like Sam Beckett did this thing, and it's kind of a big moment. We said that, like, ultimately we can't not spoil that Sam never came home in the original show, because it is mentioned a couple of times in this episode, but it's kind of an important point where Addison's telling Ben, this guy Sam did this before, and you're kind of following in his footsteps. He's like, okay, well, ask him advice, because clearly he knows what he's doing. And she's like,
he's on Instagram.
Can't really do that. Sorry, he never he never came back. So,
right, yeah.
And that adds this little bit of interesting weight to it. It's so anyway, what we've not really said yet, we've talked about what the show is, and we'll talk about the actual plot of where he jumps to in this episode a bit later as well. But what we haven't actually said yet is if we liked this episode. So, Tara, what did you think of episode 1 of Quantum Leap?
I think that it is good. Like, I'm still happy that Quantum Leap is back, and I enjoyed it very much. Actually, once the leap happens, I'd say I enjoyed it more. I thought the intros of our characters were pretty clunky and pretty rough dialogue, as far as like, I'm a character. Here's my backstory in one line. Here's everything you need to know right now.
I agree with that completely. That is TV pilotitis.
Yeah,
is what I'll call it.
Honestly, that's what I was going to say next, is that I'm pretty sure most of my problems with this episode is just general pilot problems.
Especially network pilot. Like, it's a little bit different when you're on a streaming service or cable, but like network TV, they've got 42 minutes to rush all their introductions and get to the plot. Yeah. I think what I felt with this is that, that opening, which is at their like engagement party at the start of the episode, and then later that night he goes and jumps, and then that sets us straight into the plot. I think what potential I saw in this, and this just goes for the premise in general, I guess, but I've never seen the original, is that as things start to play out once he's jumped, and he ends up in kind of like a sort of car chase scenario quite early on in the jump, I was thinking, immediately this feels kind of fun, and it feels like whatever any concerns I might have had in that opening scene about all the forced line delivery of like trying to explain in just a couple of quick lines of dialogue who everyone was, was it Jen comes up and says, you're going to have to pay me more to be security if I'm protecting you here too. And I'm like, what was that?
What am I supposed to tell people, that we work for a top secret government time travel project? Maybe don't talk about it at a party.
Yeah, there's just some
doesn't sound that top secret to me.
Exposition at the start. But once he actually jumps, and I think, like, obviously you go into this and like the original, and I've not even seen the original, but I'm thinking Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell, and I'm like, okay, the actors in this have got a lot to live up to, just from, because I've seen them in other things. I've seen Dean Stockwell in Battlestar Galactica. I've seen Bakula it's kind of sprinkled about in various things. So, but once it actually gets into the jump, and then we get this actor, what's his name, Raymond Lee, who's playing Ben. Like, once he actually starts getting to react to like being confused about who's around him, and having to, drive this getaway vehicle, and having to like look around at the 80s around him, and it's not even like he really knows he's in the wrong time period either, because he's got amnesia. he's just confused about where he is. Yeah. So once all that stuff started playing out, I was like, oh, I'm actually having fun with this, and I'm feeling a lot of potential in just what the core premise of the show is. Once it started playing out, the first 5 minutes before he jumps is probably the roughest part of the episode. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, maybe once we once the nerves are all out, and like all the actors settle into the characters, and we start to like all the characters, I think revisiting it won't be so bad. But honestly, I do actually like the two leads a lot. I haven't seen the lady who plays Addison in anything else. I think she is a relatively new actress. Mm-hmm. I have watched Raymond Lee in Kevin Can F Himself, which is a very good show. And he's not like a huge role in that, but he's like a recurring character. And so I know he's decent. And I did find that they had decent chemistry together. Like, there are some moments that are, the camera lingers on, so they're supposed to be emotional, and we're supposed to feel the weight of, what this scene really represents. And, obviously with the amnesia and Addison's character reacting to that and like wanting to say things, I did feel like there was a lot of emotion coming from her with that I bought. But so I do like the two leads. Are they Scott and Dean? Of course not. But like, I'm glad no one's trying to do an impression.
Oh, for sure.
So
yeah.
I do hope that the show leans into a bit more camp than what we saw in this. I did have fun with it. Like when the leap happens, it is a very exciting one, and there's a cool car chase, and there's some moments that really did make me laugh out loud, and I did enjoy that part of it. The thing I'm a little bit disappointed with the leap is that it didn't really feel 80s to me. Like I really think that this is a time travel show, and they really need to emphasize the time travel with more than just like a poster and like Ziggy Stardust playing in the background, which I assume they picked because of
the
Ziggy
computer.
and Ziggy.
Yeah. I did notice that. Live Aid's going on when he lands in the 80s.
There wasn't enough like things that make me feel 80s,
After the first few minutes, it didn't matter that we were in the 80s anymore. There was nothing for the rest of the episode that made you think 80s, which isn't the end of the world. Obviously, at the end of the episode, we see where he lands next time, and it's like, okay, it's going to be impossible not to notice where he is next episode.
Yes.
So, but so it may just vary. I think you probably will get some camper episodes. I think maybe that part of the charm of a premise like this is that you can have a more serious episode, then you can have a pretty fun episode. Then I think you can bounce around the tones a little bit depending on where he lands. And
that would be great. Like that's the show definitely. It just leaves that wide open for you, and you can have so much fun with it. But like it would have been nice if it really was the 80s, and we did see goons in this that they didn't have any like skinny ponytails in the back. It was just a big miss. All 80s goons are suited up big men with tiny ponytails.
I know they reshot like half of the pilot later on.
Yeah, the pilot, from what I heard, the pilot was supposed to be an earthquake episode, which has been moved to episode 6. And then this one seems to have been like shot pretty quickly.
And I have to imagine, maybe the shooting it quickly is why it feels maybe a bit half-assed on the actual time period stuff. It also makes me wonder, though, when we get this earthquake episode later on, like how much of that is also reshot because I assume that a lot of this conversation where she's explaining like what's going on to him had to have happened in that episode originally as well. So at the very least,
I mean, we don't know exactly how much Ben retains on his next leap, so maybe she has to give him a little bit of a summary each time. I'm not sure, at least for the beginning.
That'll get tedious if he's got complete amnesia every time he jumps. I'm assuming he still remembers everything from the first time he jumped onwards.
Yeah, well, it's maybe not everything. Who knows?
Okay, we'll see. So as far before we get to just the rest of the plot stuff, and there's never really too much to spoil in a pilot because it is mostly just setting up the premise. But we'll get into the actual like the plot that he's in once he's in the leap, and any other little things that it teases throughout the episode in just a second. But I did chuckle a few times at some of the jokes. I did enjoy some of the set pieces of the action, particularly the car chase early on. The stuff towards the end of the episode wasn't as good, but it was still fine. Like it was still entertaining enough. I think what the episode sold me on was just the variety that we're going to get with these leaps. The lead actor, Raymond Lee, is going to have a lot of charisma in how he plays off in these situations. And I did like, as much as I didn't like the opening 5 minutes, when we did start cutting back to the base camp, if you will, throughout the episode, I thought that was fine to break it up, and give it a bit of give us a break from the tension of what Ben was going through. Instead, we get to see the others, try to deal with things or investigate what was happening. Or the only thing that stuck out to me, and this is just like a little, like there's no way around this, but every so often they'll be like, okay, when he finishes like this, whatever the story is in this leap that he has to do to like sort of trigger the leap, once he leaps, we can grab him out of the quantum space time and bring him back. And it's just that sort of thing. I'm like, the whole premise of this show is that he's going to be stuck leaping to leap to leap to leap throughout. So there's a little bit of a, I know that's going to fail. So like, I feel like we're just going through the motions a little bit.
Well, at least they have to try it once.
Yeah. So I get it, and there's not really any way around it. The characters have to learn that that's the premise themselves as well.
Yeah.
But
syntax error. Oh no. Ben's lost.
So
I think
at this point we'll give the spoiler warning just for this first episode, just in case there's anything you do want to avoid. But the plot he jumps back into is he is a getaway driver, and there's this robbery just happening, and it's not even the main robbery. This is just them stealing some like C4 for the actual big robbery later on. But he ends up in a car chase with the police chasing them, and there's a lot of swerving, and he can't drive with a gear stick, so there's some hijinks to that. And Addison's like, I like how no one else can see Addison, but only he can see her, so she's like literally giving him advice and talking to him when everyone else is around, and just thinks he's talking to himself.
Yeah, he's got to learn to be more careful with that.
Yeah, but he he looks in the mirror, so we get this sense that everyone else is still seeing who they're supposed to see, but we're seeing him. So it establishes that stuff quite early on, and the basic gist of everything is that he's working with this guy who seems to be his friend, who's roped him into this to be this getaway driver, because he's working with these really nefarious people to steal a diamond, this necklace, the blue diamond.
The Hope Diamond.
The Hope Diamond from this gala that's happening later on at a big fancy party. And throughout the episode, we find out a couple of different things. That this guy's kind of sympathetic because he's really doing this for the money, because he can't afford his wife's medical bills. And it's like, really sob story stuff of like, okay.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of expected too, but like, boy, that scene with the family was pretty bad. It was pretty.
Again, it's this thing where they want to like get across all of this information as quickly as possible, so they have to just sort of beat you over the head with it very quickly. But this is the sort of thing that I'll forgive in a pilot, because they are kind of
this one has to juggle a lot.
But the other twist here is that the guy that Ben's jumped into is actually an undercover cop, which actually answers one of the little. Right early on, they say it's really weird. Like, we tried to look up this guy that you've become, and there's no information on him. It's because it's an alias. He didn't exist. He was just a made up name because he was an undercover cop.
That was a very fun and scary twist.
Yeah, because all of a sudden, they all want to kill him and beat him up and whatever. So it put them into this rough spot. But the important thing is that it establishes some heroics from Ben, and that later on when there's explosives, and because they set up that these explosives they've got, like, it is in history that this bomb does go off, but it's luckily never actually hurt anyone because it happens out in the street when everyone's inside. But because he changes things, everyone starts running out into the street, not intentionally. One of the bad guys shoots their gun to create chaos. But he instantly is, even before this, he's trying to convince the friend in the story to help, like, where's the bomb so we can like try and get people to safety. Where do we, he's constantly trying to help the situation and try and save people around him. I thought, this would be quite dark if he changes things and gets someone killed that wasn't supposed to die in his first leap. That would I suspect it's going to happen at some point, but it would have been very dark to do it in his very first episode.
Well, plus we don't know what the consequences are yet. Like, if he's leaping him to, fix something, what happens if he doesn't fix it, or if he, the time to fix things passes, and is he stuck in that form? Does he not leap?
And what's the consequences of him fixing things? Because butterfly effects, like, does the future start to change because he's helped these things change?
Yeah, these are questions. They're very, very fair questions to ask. Yeah.
Why do I get the feeling the original show might have touched upon this at some point?
Well, they do and they don't. So there are still mysteries to the original Quantum Leap project.
So, maybe that's part of the charm, again, of this reboot, is that we get to be more overt and just explore some of these things. So, but... yeah, there's some tension to be had. There's lots of like them hearing him talking to himself and thinking he's weird for it. And just little details like that.
I like the little every now and then you get a perspective from somebody who just sees Ben like walking around yelling at himself or something, or from their perspective,
Yeah, I also like the visual of this where constantly Addison is going to be walking around in just modern clothes like every time because she's just wearing whatever she wore in the future. But obviously Ben's going to be in whatever get up like he's been put in, so.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, it's probably because it's the exact same song, but I got a lot of True Lies flashbacks towards the end of the episode when he's dancing with the villain lady.
It is the same song, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the exact same song from True Lies, yeah. The same classic song that plays when they're doing the tango. Maybe the song.
I thought the villains were okay in this. I really would have wished they were a bit more 80s, a bit more like movie 80s.
Sure.
Just things that we recognize, even if it's not accurate to what the 80s were actually like.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, no one's got a mobile phone.
Everybody's hair is too modern. They all have beards that are not very 80s looking to me. Not that people didn't have beards in the 80s, but I don't know. I just imagine them looking different.
Yeah, that's maybe just because they had to rush like all this. Because if this was all the stuff that was added into the pilot, which is quite a lot of it. I mean, if this was all the stuff that was added into the pilot, then all that was really kept was the stuff in present day, which is like maybe a quarter of the episode, if that. Maybe
even what they talk about seems to be referencing what's happening in Ben's world, though. Like there's at one point, is it Ian comes out, and they start talking about like Ben is tangoing or dancing or something. Like okay, so these scenes seem to have, at least that scene in particular was shot for this episode.
Yeah. So
and it's a moment where he's like upset about like what the situation is for Ben because he's engaged and it's all overwhelming him and he can't help him.
I mean, maybe all of it was reshot. Maybe what's actually happened is the earthquake stuff that's been moved to another episode. All the stuff in present day for that might have been completely changed because it won't make any sense if we cut to the present day and they're talking about it as if he just went for the first time. So that's probably the stuff that's new for that episode. And then the actual like leap stuff will mostly be intact. It's just what it originally was.
Okay.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah. Hopefully it works out smooth.
I'm going to be paying close attention to it when we get to the episode, though. I'm going to be looking for the signs that things
I've heard it's
changed.
episode 6, but I don't know for sure. They don't have anything listed on IMDb yet. Well, but they have like 4 episodes, but only this one and the next one has titles.
Yeah, that tends to be what happens in IMDb with the shows. You just got to get them coming in as they're getting revealed.
Right.
Yeah, I like some of the teases to set up here. Obviously, like, why did Ben do this? Addison finds the message on his phone at the end, which is like, I can't tell you why I'm doing it, convenient, but just know that it's important to me and it has to be done, which is an interesting thing because like they show us enough throughout the episode that he's a good person, and they make it very clear that he's still acting like him, even though he doesn't have his memories. That not just that he still has his skills, like he can still speak multiple languages and all that stuff, but that he's just as stubborn and his personality is the same. So at the end of the episode, when you see this phone message and he's like, just trust me, I believe that this has to be done, you get the sense that he's doing it for a good reason. We don't know what it is yet, and maybe they'll swerve us with that, but it does feel like he's doing it for a good reason. So that almost makes the mystery more interesting. It's like, okay, what does he know? And the other part of it, of course, is that they're teasing that he's working with someone who is theorized to be Dean Stockwell's daughter.
Yeah. She's a Calavici.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to bring up the other twist that happens just because it's kind of related to this. But we also find out that Addison was supposed to be the one who leapt, and then Ben was supposed to be her hologram, which I think is really interesting for his character, that he would not only risk like taking this away from her, maybe he's doing it on purpose to save her or something, but also that he is not as prepared for this as she would have been, so maybe he learned the languages and stuff like that so that he could help her. Or maybe there's a moment in the episode where he's got to punch a guy, and she's like, I can't believe you did that. He's like, yeah, it really hurt. Like, you could tell he's not, like, he doesn't have combat skills, or he's not ready for that,
I'll caveat that by saying that him being able to punch and like tangle with the villain and negotiate, like, it did kind of feel like it was kind of camp in that sense, that he is able to just kind of like do this. Like he's able to just go into this
Well,
role.
maybe that's the secret. Maybe you just have to like put yourself in someone else's shoes and just imagine yourself like that, and you can have these other skills.
Because
he's not great at it though, right?
He's not great at it, but he's still doing far better than he should be. You know, he still feels a little cleaning TV. And I'm not complaining. Like I think
dancing's all about confidence.
That's part
Everyone
of
knows
the.
that.
Because he says, "Can I dance?" and she's like, "You think you can?" Like it would have actually been quite funny if like he then tried to dance with the villain lady when he's like negotiating with her and starts to like look stupid or mess up or something. But he doesn't. He actually it looks fine.
It does look fine. But I don't really know Tango, so
yeah, to my layman's eye, it looked fine. But yeah, so
the True Lies song was playing and they were moving their hips, so it looked like it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of TV campiness, I think, to that side of it, where he is just able to like do a lot of this stuff, and he seems to be really cool under all this pressure. Where you put any regular person into this situation where there's suddenly an undercover cop with these criminals like breathing down his neck, and like he's remarkably calm for this situation. It does make me wonder though that if that's part of the reason why he felt it had to happen is because like maybe he found out that something was going to happen to her, because maybe in the same way that the leaps are fixing things that happened in the past, like what if what was going to happen to her in the past was already kind of written in some way, so he's told about it, and that's why he's like, I'm going to have to do it then instead. I'm going to have to take it away.
Yeah, I could see that very definitely being the angle they go, is that he had to do it to save her because Ziggy says that she will die if she tries to leap or something.
Yeah.
But there's also the whoever he's working with, he like completely reprogrammed Ziggy, even the computer, so that they're not able to like track what he's doing. So it seems to be setting up that Al's daughter, who's working with Ben in secret, to take over this project, or to at least get it jump started, seems to have discovered something like an algorithm that maybe will help help him with versus the original project.
I think Ian says that right before he jumped, he uploaded a bunch of new like a patch. He put in a patch and changed the programming to
all sorts of C++ programming.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what it was. I honestly, it would not surprise me one bit. Like I say, if unlike the original show, they do actually get Ben back at the end of the season, and they shake things up by flipping them next season, where Addison is the one who goes back for a season, and Ben does become the hologram. Like, I would not be surprised if they start messing around with that, and because the original show was so strict about it just being, it's this one guy.
Here are the rules, yeah.
I could see this shaking things up where, if not after a season, maybe after 2, that's how you shake it up when, like, to stop it from becoming stale is like, okay, now they're going to swap. Now she's going to be the one who's actually in the past. And maybe that's, different because maybe, in this episode alone, you see him, like, jump into a guy who's, he jumps into a white guy and he's obviously Asian. What happens if you flip that? Obviously, he might jump into a woman at some point, and we'll sort of see that experience. But what if you then flip it and you have a woman jumping into like certain, different types of men's bodies when they're doing bad stuff, and she has to change things based on that, or so on. There's like so much you could sort of do with flipping it around that I kind of suspect that even if they're not doing it this season or have plans to do it yet, I think if it goes long enough, they will do it because it's too tempting to not do it. So,
that's true.
All they really need is a reason to keep jumping. Like if they come back, especially since Ben clearly had a reason to jump this first time. If there's some ongoing like threat that requires, we have to keep jumping to fix the space-time continuum because something's happening. Basically, when in the original show, when Sam was jumping about, he was basically messing up with the fabric of everything, and we have to fix it.
Yeah, that's another one of those theories, is that the reason the rules seem very strict in the beginning, but then they just kind of like, it's different each time, like it's whatever is most convenient for the episode. Then maybe it's because every time Sam leaps, he changes history just a little bit, so the rules work differently from the end of the episode on.
That sounds like a good little bit of fan headcanon to explain writing getting a little more loose as time goes on to me.
I mean, if the rules are vague enough.
But I think it's actually, I'm actually very interested in checking out the original show and sort of doing it with this kind of like side by, not literally side by side. We're going to wait until the season's done or when it goes on a break and we'll start the original show. But I think going through it from this perspective where I'm getting these teases of what the original show was and then getting to experience it in chunks sort of in between this, I think will be quite interesting. And who knows, this may get cancelled after one season, so then it'll just be the original show until it's done. But network
that
TV's,
would be disappointing, but
yeah, I think the pilot did okay. The ratings were, it was like 2 million something.
It came on right after The Voice. I stayed up late to watch it. It was late though. It was at like 10 o'clock at night. Yikes. I
mean, these days obviously DVR and you know it's on Peacock. I think like.
Yeah, I have. I had to watch it right away because I'm a fan.
Nah, I was like, I watch very few network TV shows anymore because most of them do kind of suck. And there's definitely some network TV qualities in this, but I don't necessarily mind having some of those things in there. If anything, there's room in my life for a show that is a network TV show that's done well, and I think this has potential and promise. It's, you know, it's a bit early to say if it's going to like stick the landing and do the long haul where it is exciting week to week and it's, you know, always going to be a good time. But it was very telling to me that as soon as the car chase was going, that I was kind of starting to enjoy the action of it, which, you know, action in network TV doesn't tend to be that good. But I was kind of enjoying the hijinks of it and him kind of freaking out and, you know, trying to deal with...
That's often the highlight of the episodes is just like, who is he and what scenario has he been dropped into? You know, because he never starts at the beginning of anything. And
I'm sure we're always going to get a tease at the end of what the next place is. And obviously we do here where he wakes up and he's on a space shuttle and it's just launching. Like the last shot of the episode is literally the launch of the space shuttle going up.
I hope this astronaut like does get to experience what's happening as well, because you know he trained a lifetime for it, and then some other guy just sweeps in and takes over.
Yeah, but maybe he was originally going to die. Like maybe originally this you know, I mean I don't know. I didn't recognize the time period specifically from this.
No, I don't think there's a giveaway.
Yeah, but what if this was one that was supposed to end in disaster, but his job is to make sure it doesn't?
Well, I don't know if they would do something like that. I mean, like, are you talking about like a real life thing?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's just something made up for the show. But
yeah, I don't think Ben's gonna like stop the Challenger from exploding or something like that.
That would be ballsy though, if like a season finale for like the event to be something we all know because it's a real thing.
Yeah,
that could be ballsy.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Like, I'm sure they're going to go kind of dark with the episodes. Like, not all of them will be super fun, you know.
Oh, sure, yeah. I suspect there'll be some dark ones. I suspect there's going to be, you know, it'll probably tackle various issues where he's maybe in like a really tough position, you know, in certain time periods. I know that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I saw someone say this online that he, like, in the original show, at least for the most part, he never jumped beyond when he was alive himself. Is that correct?
That is the way it's supposed to be, yeah.
Yeah. I'm assuming they broke that rule eventually, and that was like, you know, interesting.
There was one exception. Okay. I'll spoil that. There was one exception, but it was like kind of a bend.
Okay. Well,
of the rule.
Just from like the trailers and stuff, it seems like this will probably like change
even
that.
The poster, like, it shows some really old cars and stuff, unless he jumps into a car collector. I don't.
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw a photo of them.
Of
I saw a photo. I mean, maybe they're actors on like a show or something in the leap, but the photo was him in like a cowboy outfit, and I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure that's before his time, because this dude I think might be younger than me.
There's cowboys still in America.
Yeah, I don't actually know what age he is.
He just jumped into Wyoming, middle of Wyoming. That's all.
Yeah, you know, now that we're in our 30s, there's always a good chance that someone. Oh no, this dude is still slightly older than me, just slightly.
Just slightly.
He's younger than you though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how old his character is, because he was apparently alive in 85, which is when I was born. Since this leap was in 85.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. It'd be kind of cool if they mentioned this was his birthday. Like his first sleep was to the day he was born.
Yeah. That would be neat. I wonder, does it continue then? Like from when he goes into the particle accelerator? Is he like, or the quantum leap accelerator? Is that the cutoff to when he can jump? Or will it continue? Like if he jumps on a Tuesday, could he leap to that Friday if it's already past that Friday in real life?
That's a very interesting question, and I guess it gets into the, because I was thinking about it in a different way there. I was thinking, not that he can jump into the future, but let's say let's say he's leaping around for years, right? So present day has moved on. Can he jump past the point he jumped back from, because technically he's still existing past that point, or if he can just jump forward and it's still in his time, his time of life, as it were, does the quantum just know when he dies, so they know we can jump ahead another 40, 50 years?
Yeah. Is he dead, even, when he goes into the quantum leap machine?
Yeah, is he dead the whole time? That'd be a really dark ending.
Is he dead now?
If we find
Where'd
out
his body go?
that he's just dead, yeah. So it's a really good question.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's exciting for fans is that Ernie Hudson actually plays a character from the original show that Sam leapt into.
Oh,
so
cool.
Presumably, like, he had a career change because of this experience, and maybe he remembered something and is like, I had this experience, I had to figure it out.
That is a very neat bit of connective tissue. I am actually very excited.
We don't see much of him in this episode, but yeah, that's a lot of fans have questions about what is the experience like for the person who's been leapt.
I'm suddenly very excited to get to that episode of the original series then, because that sounds intriguing, especially since in this case he's the head of this project, which is tied to the military, but obviously it's its own little division, right? And he's the one in charge of it. Like, does he believe in this because he knows he was leapt into and what that did for his life in some way?
Yeah. I mean, if he just like gets drunk one episode and starts telling a story to the security lady, then maybe we'll just get some answers in there.
Yeah.
What was his experience like, man? I
will say, yeah, there was one scene that, like, her scene where she comes in and says, "You'll have to fire me because Ben got in with some other person after hours. That shouldn't have happened. The security protocols were all mine. You have to fire me." And he's like, "You've already figured this out, and it's only been a couple hours. You're clearly quite good at this. No, you're not fired. Go away."
This scene was a little bit clunky. I mean, she was trying to like establish what type of person she was and her character a little bit better. I think we didn't really get too much of anyone from the party scene that we're supposed to know.
Again, it's the pilot problem where you have to like give all the side characters establishing things to make them feel like who they are, but ultimately they always get more fleshed out when they get an episode that focuses a bit more on them. 5 or 6 in, you get a bit more focus on one of them in the future, and you'll get to know them a bit more. Maybe
Ben will leap into one of them.
Yeah. The other dude's kind of a music snob. That's what we know about him.
Who? Which one?
Was it Ian?
Oh, Ian.
He's a music snob.
I think Ian's. Yeah, I think they're non-binary. But
are they? Okay.
Yeah. But also, what I like about their character is that the original show, Dean Stockwell was sort of known for his insane outfits, and it looks like we're going to get that through the character of Ian in this, which I appreciate. There's someone keeping it alive.
So is there intent to have Addison wearing the dullest, most plain looking, like, just shirt ever?
She wore like a Canadian tuxedo in this, right? Like denim on denim. I mean, it looked great. She's a very attractive woman. But
yeah, but it's not a loud outfit, It's not vibrant.
She definitely
wacky.
Blended into the background. I would love if she wore more colorful outfits, because it definitely would like help Ben out even, to like if she just wore highlighter yellow all the time. There she is. Addison.
Do you just wear a t-shirt saying, "Hey, I'm from the future.
I'm a hologram."
I mean, I wonder if they're going to. Is there a reason why it can only be one person who goes in to be like? Why can't like she take a turn and like let Ernie go in for a trip to talk to him?
It's whatever she's touching will appear, but I think he can only see and hear her because of some sort of like brainwave matching thing they've done before the project was commenced.
That makes sense then, because it was still meant to be these two, just the other way around. So
yeah,
that link is still okay. That's neat. Okay,
yeah, there's some
sense.
sort of neural link that's established
like Pacific
beforehand.
Rim.
Yes,
they have to go into the rift together.
From Quantum Leap.
Oh yeah, I'm not suggesting it stole it from Pacific Rim. I'm just comparing it to something else that has a mental link between two compatible people.
That's true.
That's all I'm getting at.
That's love, baby.
So yeah, I think it's a promising enough pilot. It's definitely got some pilot wrinkles around it, right? There's some clunky introductions of characters, some clunky lines here or there to sort of try and establish who some characters are, but you know,
you're much more experienced with network TV than I am. I mean, since the 90s, anyway.
Yeah, and we're probably going to get episode 2-itis next time, which is basically they have to reiterate everything in episode 2. So it feels a little bit less exciting by default, but
right.
You know, we'll see what they do with it. And that's not the end of the world if that happens. It's just something to be kind of aware of that often does. So yeah, I'm feeling fairly optimistic. You know, part of me was worried that we're going to come in. You were excited to do this, and we're excited to do this, and then the original show. But part of me was worried that we're going to come in and it was just going to be a turd. Like it was just going to be really bad. And it, you know, it could have been like you could have. Like, you know, I mentioned the Knight Rider
reboot. It could have been the new Twilight Zone.
Well, I mentioned Knight Rider earlier. Like, you know, that Knight Rider pilot from like 10 years ago, whatever it was now. Like it was terrible. Like, you know, everyone was horribly cast. Like it was you know, cheesy in a really bad way, where it was just trying really hard to be like a show that appealed to, you know, like your lowest common denominator TV audience that watches crime shows on CBS and things like that. It was, you know, just the worst of the worst.
They should have made it a talking truck. Then maybe you know, network TV watchers would have stuck with it.
But I got enough in this episode, particularly with Ben and him interacting with the world around him, that gave me hope that, yeah, not every episode is going to be equal, because sometimes the guest stars who are in the leap might not be good some episodes, and that might drag the episodes down, that they're, you know, where you have weaker guest stars. But I definitely saw potential in this for at least always a decent amount of fun, and potentially some occasionally really good episodes when the script and the guest characters all kind of, you know, fit together and create some magic. So
yes, when everything is psycho synergized.
Yes, like Addison and Ben, who are linked. Yeah, which by the way, that like thing he said at the party about two particles like coming together. He's trying to be romantic.
Again, they sort of established like, oh, you're a nerd, because he's like, oh, the only thing I hate more than whatever is like public speaking in large groups or something. And
oh yeah, I related to
like,
him.
oh yeah, public speech, you know, like make a speech, and then he was like just fine at it.
Yeah, I mean, like him saying that he hates that they're having a party at their place because everyone's touching his stuff. Like I'm like, yeah, I relate to this. This is horrible. But then I
love having people over. I'm like, finally, this stuff's getting used.
But then he's doing James Bond stuff. He's doing, you know, the dancing with the attractive like femme fatale, and then he's punching people. And, you know, he's throwing bombs in sewers and all sorts.
Yeah, that fire effect was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Also, like, wouldn't the C4 really do some damage there too?
You would think the sewer system would be pretty messed up from that, yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know how explosive that much C4 would be, but, you know, if a lot of people died from it being in a van, just being in the sewer system, I imagine there'd still be, you know, an alligator when, like, the alligator comes out of the sewer.
Do you know what?
It made a lot more damage than what we saw in this.
What's so funny is I also thought of alligator when he threw the bomb down the manhole.
Appropriate.
I guess it's just a thing I watched recently that had people throwing sticks of dynamite down manholes and whatever else. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it probably causes a lot of damage underneath, but at least it's better than people dying because there's no one down there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without question. I just thought, like, is there no way that, like, bits of the ground would come up and strike somebody?
I would have thought maybe more. Well, I guess it depends how big the blast is, but I was maybe expecting to see it implode a little bit. I think the real answer to this is just that would mean more effects, and it's just easier to have a ball of fire come out the hole.
Yeah.
You know,
that was a really funny special effect, though.
That'll do.
It didn't look very good.
No, it did not. And it's a network TV show, so occasionally we're going to get some dodgy visual effects, and that's just, you know, something
I forgive it, though. I'm just so glad that Quantum Leap is back on the air. More peace.
You missed it all those like few months since you finished watching the original.
It was
show.
Torture.
Everyone
I'm
else,
sure I had it way worse than anybody else who's a Quantum
everyone
Leap
else who loved the original show waited decades. People grew up and had families in the time that they were waiting since Quantum Leap went off the air, and you come along and like, I waited 3 months.
It was so hard.
Oh dear. Anyway, I guess that'll do it for this first episode. Yeah. So I expect we'll see the mysterious Aldar in present day at some point.
And I thought Jewel State was in this show.
Maybe that's
Is that
her.
the name? Did I get it right?
Yeah, she's in another show actually right now. I saw a trailer for it. She's in like a comedy with Victor Garber about being a lawyer. But I think it's actually a Canadian show that's airing in the US on delay, so I don't know if it's like still filming or whatever. But maybe she's the Eldar. Maybe that's Jill State.
I think I saw on IMDb it was a different actress for that character, but
oh, okay, fair enough.
Since we technically see her in the beginning of this episode, she's credited. But I didn't see Jewel State anymore. I don't know who she's playing.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Assuming she's still on the show, maybe she's one of the people that changed.
Maybe she was just in the earthquake pilot.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, that's why they had to make it to episode 6. They had to edit out all the Jewel State scenes.
I hope not. I like Jewel State, but we'll see. Yeah, maybe something changed. Who knows? But yeah, that'll just about do it. But yeah, we'll be back next week with episode 2 of Quantum Leap, and we'll try and keep them coming as quickly as we can once they air. This week we got to record on Tuesday and put the episode out, put the review out on the Wednesday. Hopefully we can keep doing that. If some weeks we can't do that, then you know it'll be a little bit later in the week. But we'll try our best to keep it as quick as we can. But let us know what you thought of the first episode of Quantum Leap in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. You can of course support everything we do by hitting the super thanks button below the video, or of course you can go over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. So yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to make you do it.
Thank you.
When we get to classic Quantum Leap, you can do it on that.
Okay.
Because that's technically replacing Babylon 5 when that happens, and you do it on Babylon 5, so...
All right, we'll just keep this train moving.
But yeah, that's our thoughts on the first episode. So let us know what you think, and we'll see you next time. So keep watching TV. Should I have like a signature thing for this? Since we're going to do the old show as well, should I have a Quantum Leap outro?
Well, I mean, Sam's was always, oh boy. It seems that Ben's is going to be, oh shit.
That makes sense, because you couldn't say oh shit on the TV.
Yeah.
That said though, it does kind of like, you don't hear him say it. It kind of like cuts outside
It's
to
implied.
the thirsters. Yeah. If anything, I think I thought he was dropping an F-bomb rather than shit. But
maybe in certain circumstances, yes, that would be very appropriate.
that would be, Joe, that'd be a funny running gag if at the end of every episode he jumps to his new location and he always goes off, and it always like cuts to like a noise. It cuts out the word. That'd be a good running gag. I'm not.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not against
So
that.
you're gonna have to come up with oh something.
I'm trying to think of a pun with leap in it or quantum in it.
Oh, Canada.
Why? Because you're Canadian?
I mean, originally. Oh, Christmas tree. Oh,
Well,
Henry.
I'm not questioning if you're Canadian. I know you're Canadian. I'm saying, is that why you're suggesting no Canada?
I'm just thinking of O stuff. Rio.
Maybe I just pretend we're on the Italian version, and at the end of every episode, the Italian man jumps and goes, "Mamma mia!"